playoffs are finally here, and every game one has been played, so here's 3 takeaways for every series going forward. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Court Vision. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 of my takeaways for every single first-round playoff series, and we're going to start with the Bucks versus the Pacers. First thing, Giannis, man, he's the whole offense for this Bucks team. Like, to put it into perspective, he had 36 of Milwaukee's 98 points by himself, so over a third of Milwaukee's points. He had 38 minutes, and he had 40% usage the entire time. And the rest of the team shot a combined 21 for 61 from the field. So Giannis is putting the team on his back. All the secondary creators totally missing. Kevin Porter Jr. was 2 of 7, didn't do enough to keep the bench unit afloat. Bobby Portis was 2 of 8. Kuzma was literally doing cardio out there. Taurean Prince was 0 for 1 from the field. He only played 19 minutes. And, they're the best shooting team in the regular season, but they shot 9 for 37 from 3, which is good for a little under 25%. 5 players on the team took multiple threes and hit none of them. If you're a Bucks fan, you got to pray Dame comes back soon for Game 3 in Milwaukee. Second thing, the system for Indiana just totally made the difference. They had 28 assists in this game compared to just 15 for Milwaukee. Halliburton was doing a great job drawing 2 on the ball, driving the offense really well despite having a poor shooting night himself. He's finding Miles Turner on the pop off of screens. He's collapsing the defense, getting the swing going, all that stuff. And the Pacers had 6 players in double figures. Miles Turner was hitting his threes. He was 4 for 6 from 3. Andrew Nembhard was really raising his level, pushing pace in transition, getting downhill aggressively. Pascal Siakam had a super efficient 25 points on, a mix of catch and shoot threes, posting up, or, getting downhill and finishing strong off of attacking a closeout. And then TJ McConnell and Benedict Mathurin, together running the bench offense, both had a good night. Mathurin was a bit inefficient, but, he got to the line, had 8 free throws, and he played some pretty hard defense. Third thing, the pace and the speed of Indiana was really just too much for Milwaukee's defense to keep up with. Brook Lopez looked really slow trying to defend. He was dropping in the pick and roll coverage, getting punished for being too slow, not stepping up, not staying with his man well. He wasn't able to close out fast enough off of screens or off of a swing pass. And the couple times he was in isolation, he just got blown by. The rotations and the help were just too slow for Milwaukee all game. When the Pacers were moving the ball off the drive and kick or off of swing passes, the rotations were just way too slow, and nobody was really doing a good job helping at the rim except for Giannis. And they just kept giving up mismatches in transition or in semi-transition. The Bucks were too slow getting back, and the Pacers were either able to find a mismatch that they liked to go work on or get them into rotation off of attacking it, coming off a high screen, stuff like that. The Bucks just couldn't keep up with the Pacers in transition. Second series, Clippers versus Nuggets. First thing I'm talking about here is, what is Jamal Murray's form looking like? In this game, he was a mixed bag. He was 7 for 20 from the field with 21 points, so not a bad performance, all things considered, but pretty inefficient. He was able to find his spots on his mid-range jumper a lot, off the pick and roll or in isolation, but just wasn't knocking him down. And I think part of that is just due to Chris Dunn doing a lot of work, making him uncomfortable, chasing him over screens, picking him up full court, stuff like that. Second big thing for this series is Adelman's coaching for the Nuggets looked spectacular. He basically benched Michael Porter Jr. in the second half. He only played 10 minutes in the second half and didn't close the game. Only played 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, and it was with the bench unit. The Nuggets were struggling early on, but he took a timeout and basically was screaming at the team, asking them to play more intense, and the defensive intensity picked up, and it changed the whole flow of the game. Before that, it felt like the Clippers were running away from it, but after that, it turned into a real, band for band defensive slugfest. I liked his adjustments throughout the game defensively. Kawhi had 16 in the first half, but once they started sending more pressure, basically doubling on his drives, they managed to hold him to 6 points in the second half. And he made the decision to play Russell Westbrook in clutch minutes, and that ended up working out. Russell Westbrook is often a mixed bag, and, he had some good plays, some bad plays, but eventually he made the game-winning plays, had the game-winning steal. Adelman ran basically a 6-man rotation. Jalen Pickett only played 5 minutes. Peyton Watson only played 14 minutes. So it was the starters and Russ just cooking for most of the game, and it ended up winning it. Third thing I'm going to talk about is just play on the margin, so rebounding, turnovers, and transition. The Nuggets kind of had a period down the stretch where they got a ton of offensive rebounds, and they basically, beat the Clippers off of that stretch. The Clippers turned the ball over 20 times, and Denver was just eating off that in transition and off of those steals. You kind of would expect that to come back down to earth a little bit. And then Denver, on the other hand, struggled to defend in transition all game. The Clippers were pushing off misses from Denver, and they just couldn't get back in time. So we'll see how that plays out over the rest of the series. Next series, we're talking about Pistons versus Knicks. And the big narrative here is the inexperience from the Pistons causing that big fourth quarter collapse. They were competitive through the first 3 quarters, but it just completely fell apart. They started the quarter with a 5-second violation. They had 3 separate defensive 3-second calls. And New York had a 21-0 run at the beginning of the fourth quarter, fueled by 7 turnovers from Detroit and just a ton of individual defensive mistakes, overhelp, things like that. Second narrative for this series, Pistons offense was really just struggling to get consistent looks. They had an 87.8 half-court rating in this game, which is really bad. Cade had a pretty rough night overall. In the first half, he was really having trouble finding his spots or getting in any kind of rhythm scoring the ball. In the second half, he picked it up, ended with 21 on 8 of 21 from the field, so not super efficient, but he was doing a pretty good job finding passes if they were there. But OG Anunoby did a great job on the assignment, so Cade's going to have to figure out how to work around that in the next games. Tobias Harris had a great half in the first, but only 8 in the second half. He was attacking mismatches, doing stuff like that, generating a lot of offense for them in the first half. Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley running over screens, pulling up in transition, hitting their threes, but that wasn't enough to fuel the offense. And the final thing I'm going to talk about for this series is the Knicks might be better than we thought. The Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson lineup together on the floor looked really good. Cat was able to find and bully those mismatches when he didn't have a center on him, whether it was Tobias or another wing, something like that. And then Mitchell Robinson was doing a lot as an offensive rebounder and then defending in the pick and roll. I think his defense in the pick and roll helps so much with one of New York's biggest flaws, which is rim protection. Cat's ability to score on those mismatches make me just a lot more confident about the Knicks matching up, with some of the better teams in the East, like Boston and Cleveland, even if I still favor those two. Jalen Brunson's ankle doesn't seem to be a problem at all. He had a little trouble in the first half, started really inefficient. I think he was 2 for 13, something like that. He was finding his spots, but just not knocking down the shots. And then he went and changed his shoes partway through and then ended the game 12 for 27 with 34 points and just completely took over in the clutch. OG Anunoby is really just impressing me a lot as a scorer. He's aggressive, using his size and his physicality, getting downhill, either off of attacking a closeout or in isolation on a mismatch, and he was hitting his threes when they came to him. He had 23 on 18 shots, not the most efficient game, but if he's going to score like this, the ceiling of the offense is so high. The bench from New York, surprisingly, had a pretty good game. Campaign especially had 14 points in 15 minutes, including that big run in the fourth where New York went on a 21-0 stretch. He had basically 9 points in a row by himself during that time. Next series, Wolves versus the Lakers. And man, the first thing I want to say is the Lakers defense was struggling. They sent way too much help. They were giving away kind of easy looks by helping, one pass away on the strong side on Ant driving or Randall posting up. They were over-rotating, Ant had 9 assists in this game, mostly off of drive and kick when that help came. He was just doing a good job finding it, and the Lakers couldn't really come up with an answer for it. They were switching too much as well. They switched basically everything all game, which was allowing Ant to get those mismatches that he wanted on Luka, or, for Naz Reid or Julius Randle to get a smaller defender on them and go to work. And then the Lakers' transition defense was really bad. Minnesota had 25 points in transition, either, just attacking the basket or finding open threes, guys navigating to the corner on the break, and the Lakers had no answer for it. Second takeaway is Minnesota's role players were scoring the hell out of the ball. Jaden McDaniels was on a new level offensively. He was super aggressive attacking closeouts, getting downhill when he had a smaller player like Luka or Austin Reeves on him. Naz Reid had a great game. He was finishing over smaller players at the rim, shot super well from 3, and the Wolves rotation in general just shot the Lakers out of the building. They were 21 for 42 from deep, which Probably unsustainable, but Jaden McDaniels was 3 for 3, great sign. Naz Reid was 6 for 9, great sign. Julius Randle was 4 for 6, all great signs for this team going forward. Final narrative for this game is the Lakers offense was not living up to the hype against the Minnesota defense. They had only 15 assists in this game to Minnesota's 29, and it was just basically iso ball all game. The big three, so Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves shot 53 of Los Angeles 83 field goal attempts. Austin Reeves had a really bad first half. He never had a good matchup to attack. It was either Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dante DiVincenzo or Ant on him most of the time. He picked it up a little bit in the second half, but he was pretty inefficient, 5 for 13 with only 16 points. Luka had a pretty good scoring night. He had 37 on 12 of 22, but they really limited his playmaking. He wasn't able to find those driving kick passes, corner threes that he really likes. He had 1 assist all game. LeBron was fine. There's not really anything positive to say for LA scheme-wise either. There was no creative screen actions, not a ton of pick and roll, not trying to free guys up running off screens for threes, nothing like that. It was basically just Luka, LeBron, and Reeves taking turns going to work, and then the defensive pressure from Minnesota kept them in check. Next series, Grizzlies versus Thunder. We'll speed through this one because this was a blowout. It was a perimeter defensive masterclass for the Thunder. That's the first thing. Ja was getting tortured this game. He had Luke Dort on him. He had Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe all chasing him over screens, pressuring him hard on the perimeter, making his life difficult in the pick and roll. Memphis had 22 turnovers, mostly caused by that, incessant ball pressure. OKC had 12 steals, getting in the passing lanes, getting out and running in transition off of that. And then there was a stretch through the second quarter where Alex Caruso had Desmond Bane basically in prison for 6 minutes straight. It was just a masterclass. Second thing for this game, the offense for OKC had no problem scoring even without Shea playing well. They had 131 points in this game, even though Shea had only 15 on 4 for 13 shooting. Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein both had good offensive games, whether it was Chet, picking and popping, or Hartenstein in the pick and roll, getting to his floater, punishing the defenders for backpedaling. The speed and the movement for OKC's offense was really good. Memphis was just reeling in rotation, generated a ton of easy kick-out threes for Lou Dort, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, And then J-Dub looked really aggressive getting downhill, had 20 points with no threes made. And the third takeaway is just OKC is too good. If they play anywhere close to this level and Shea heats up, I just don't see any team beating them. They just look so good. Maybe a little overreaction after one game, but they're really good. All right, the Magic versus the Celtics. Big thing here is the concerns that I have for Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. For Jason Tatum, he was really struggling to score. He only had 17 points in 40 minutes, 8 for 22 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3. He wasn't able to get to his spots in isolation, even against smaller players. He was settling for mid-range fades when he was trying to score on a clear out in the post. And the wrist injury might be a concern. He got fouled going for a layup later in the game, hit his hand awkwardly. He missed both free throws afterwards, so that's something to watch. Jaylen Brown still looks kind of slow with that knee injury. He was having trouble getting to his spots. His first step just clearly wasn't 100%, but he still was able to score decently on, short jumpers or just being physical down in the paint. But it was just an inefficient night overall for him. He was 6 for 14, only 16 points, and 0 for 2 from 3. And then for Kristaps Porzingis, he's just not involved offensively in this game really at all. He only took 8 shots all game, and he was 1 for 8. He had 5 points in only 25 minutes. I mean, he looked good defensively, but it's a little bit of a worry, especially with his injury history. If he were to go down, that would be bad. Second narrative here, it's Paolo and Franz versus the world, right? You thought the Lakers thing was bad. Paolo and Franz together combined took 51 of Orlando's 81 shots, and they scored 59 of Orlando's 86 points. It's crazy. Paolo had a great night. He was hunting mismatches, being physical, getting downhill, getting to the line, kind of going through defenders. He was taking a lot of, mid-range post-up kind of ISO shots, but he scored really efficiently on them. He was 14 for 27. He had 36 points with 11 rebounds. Just a great game from him. He's proving to me that he's a playoff riser. Franz was less efficient. He had 10 field goals made on 24 shots, and he was only 1 for 6 from 3 on some difficult shots from 3, but also some easier ones that you'd like him to make. He had 23 points, so not really efficient, but he was doing a decent job trying to get something going in the pick and roll with like Wendell Carter, or as like a downhill threat, kind of passing, scoring in transition. Nobody else on the team took more than 6 shots, and everybody besides Jonathan Isaac, aside from Paolo and Franz, was 40% or worse from the field. It just didn't look like there were any NBA scorers on the team outside of those two. Final narrative here, there's some interesting kind of lineup matchup things for Boston. We saw a little bit of Luke Cornett and Al Horford getting minutes together without Kristaps Porzingis. They had Cornett on Paolo, maybe trying to see how that size matchup worked. Sam Hauser only got 9 minutes. Maybe he's just kind of seen as a defensive liability, with Paolo or Franz hunting him on a mismatch. Drew Holiday was the primary assignment on Paolo for a lot of the game, but Paolo was perfectly willing to attack that, and he scored pretty efficiently. I don't know. For me, it just felt like Joe Mazzulla was kind of just experimenting, trying to feel out what he can get away with, what matchups, what lineups he can do, and what he can't. Another less interesting series that I'll speed through is the Miami Heat versus the Cavs. First thing is just a 3-headed monster that is the guards for Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell completely took over the game for a stretch throughout the second and the third quarter. He was totally unstoppable, just explosive to the rim. He had 22 points on exclusively drives with no threes made through the third quarter. And he ended with 30 points on 11 for 19, even with going 2 for 9 from 3. He was 9 for 10 on 2-pointers. If he's on this level, Cleveland's going to be super, super scary. Darius Garland looked comfortable taking over when Donovan Mitchell was on the bench. He took over down the stretch in the fourth quarter. He was picking Miami apart in the pick and roll with Jared Allen, getting to his floater, knocking down threes. He had 27 on 10 for 17 shooting and 5 for 9 from 3. Great game from him. And then to add on to that, Ty Jerome came off the bench. He had a stretch in the third where he was totally unconscious, making every single shot, picking apart Miami, pulling up off screens, getting defenders on his hip, getting to his floater. He had 28 points in 26 minutes on 10 for 15 from the field and 5 for 8 from 3. So just the fact that any one of these guys can be out there running the offense at any given time and just completely take over should make the rest of the East scared. Second takeaway was the different level of defensive intensity we saw from Cleveland. Down the stretch of the season, they kind of took their foot off the gas. We were like, oh, they look a little shaky recently. But clearly they've upped the effort in the postseason. The whole team was putting up way more on-ball pressure, getting in passing lanes. They had 8 steals as a team. You have Donovan Mitchell diving for loose balls, screaming after getting a jump ball. It just looks like they want it really bad. Evan Mobley held up really well when he was defending Andrew Wiggins on an island. I said Andrew Wiggins before when I was talking about Aaron Wiggins, and then I said Aaron Wiggins when I was talking about Andrew Wiggins right now. I don't know, but if he held up pretty well defending Andrew Wiggins on an island, that makes me a little more confident about him on an island with other wings, specifically Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. The game just didn't really feel like that close because of the defensive intensity. A lot of Miami's scoring was just tough shots from Bam and Tyler Hero. And then Jared Allen also had a crazy chase down block on Bam. And then third takeaway is Davion Mitchell might be really good. He was 8 for 12 from the floor, 2 for 3 from 3, at 18 points and 9 assists. He looked super aggressive as a ball handler. He was finding, Kel'el Ware and Bam in the pick and roll or around the rim for lobs. He looked good getting to his floater and whatever, scoring in the pick and roll. Good game from him. Shout out. Last series here is Warriors versus the Rockets. And the first thing I want to say is do not count out the Rockets just yet, even if they had a really bad offensive game. Golden State's defense was really good. They were swarming on drives, causing a lot of problems for Houston's wings. Golden State got 14 steals in this game. They were just forcing bad passes, getting in the passing lanes down low, clogging up the paint, making it really hard. Fred VanVleet had so many good three-point looks that he just couldn't knock down. He was 2 for 13 from three, literally shooting toward eights. You'd expect him to pick that up, though. Jalen Green looked pretty bad. He was 3 for 15 from the field. He was getting to the rim and just not being able to finish. He was 0 for 4 from three. Moses Moody and Gary Payton did a great job defending him all game. You'd like to see him pick that up a little bit more. He's going to be up and down. But Şengün was really good in this game. He was eating on his post touches, getting to his hook, getting to his floater. He was 11 for 18 from the field, 26 points. When they sent help, he sometimes got a little panicked. He did have 5 turnovers, but he was scoring really well in isolation and even sometimes over 2. Second narrative from this game is, man, the Rockets dominated on the glass. They had 52 rebounds in this game compared to Golden State having only 36, 22 of which were offensive. And they had 22 second chance points off of those offensive boards, which is below what you would expect. So if they pick that up, then the Rockets really definitely have a chance. Steven Adams played only 19 minutes, but he had 12 rebounds, and he was the only positive plus-minus on the team just because of his crazy ability to rebound the ball. Golden State tried to match the double big lineup that the Houston Rockets threw out there with Quentin Post and Kevon Looney together, but it didn't look great. Amen Thompson was good on the offensive glass. He had 9 boards, 6 of which were offensive. He was finding guys off of those rebounds, creating opportunities to score. He had 6 assists, multiple of which were off of those rebounds. And then the final narrative for this series and for the video is, man, Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler are just different. Steph was doing all the Steph things, crazy deep threes, off balance, coming off screens, hand in his face, no space. None of it mattered. In the first quarter, he was getting run off the line a little bit, but he was really good finishing at the rim with Şengün coming over to help. He ended the game with 31 on 19 shots, 5 for 9 from 3. He's just so good. The Rockets have so many good defenders to throw at him, and it just didn't matter. Dylan Brooks, Amen Thompson, Fred VanVleet, not a problem for Steph. And then Jimmy was also really spectacular. The number one thing I have to say is he just looked so patient, right? Getting to his spots in the mid-range, getting to his turnaround fades. Doesn't matter if it was Amen, Jabari, Tari Eason, Dylan Brooks on him. He was just finding his spots, elevating and getting the bucket, getting the line, stuff like that. 10 for 19, had 25 points. All right, that's all I've got for this one. Stay tuned. I'm going to keep covering the playoffs as they happen, and I'll see you guys in the next one.